Hello, this is a quick video to explain how to install OliveTin using Docker Compose. So on the left hand side of my screen I've just got a Linux virtual machine, in this case running Fedora, but these instructions should work just fine if you're using Debian or Ubuntu or Arch or whatever it might be. On the right hand side of the screen you see I've got docs.olivetin.app, which is the OliveTin documentation obviously. And under the installation section, I've got the Docker Compose instructions open here. So in this video, I'm just going to run through these instructions and add a bit of narrative to explain kind of what it is I'm doing. If you just prefer to listen to these instructions in video format, then this video is for you. So first of all, we're going to start off with the example config file. Just copy this. And we're going to create this file on the Linux server. In this case, I'm going to use I'm going to use Vim, sorry. But if you prefer to use Nano, or if you're kind of new to Linux, Nano is a great editor. Also gedit or kwrite if you prefer graphical editors, but I kind of use Vim day to day, so that's what I will be using. So we're going to just paste the contents into this file, and let's just walk through what's here. So the container name can be anything you like. I'm just going to use OliveTin because it's very simple, but you set the name if you want to change that, that's fine. The image is the container image that's going to get downloaded from Docker Hub when we run this in a second, and that should pull the latest version of OliveTin. And also if you're using ARM64 or just ARM32-bit or x86, it should pick the right architecture as well automatically. In terms of the volumes, there's one folder here called docker/OliveTin, and this is going to be the config directory, so the config folder that's going to get mounted into the OliveTin container. And the reason we do this is so that the config will stay on your server in between container restarts, right? Or if you delete the container and start again, then you'll keep your config file, which is the most important thing. The ports here means that OliveTin will listen on port 1337 by default. You could change this one to port 80 or port 1234 or whatever port you prefer. But the second port is the internal port being used by OliveTin, and you probably just need to leave that as default unless you've got a particularly good reason to. But for this demo, we'll just use 1337. Externally as well. The last command just says restart unless stopped. I think that's pretty obvious what that does, so we can skip past that one. The example has got a few networks set up, but again we can just use the default network that's created for us automatically. If you want to use different networks, that's fine, and there's also some instructions also here on how to use Docker Compose with traffic or other reverse proxies. That's quite a popular pattern that a lot of people do, but we will leave that for another day. So let's save this config file. We didn't change anything; we just removed the networking section, but we'll save that and get it up and running. And before we get the container up, it probably makes sense to create that folder that we were just talking about. So if we do make it here, this one. Then that will create that directory /docker/OliveTin. This could be /etc/OliveTin or /opt/OliveTin. As long as it matches your Docker Compose file, then you can put the config files wherever you like on your file system. So if we go into that directory and have a look, you see there's nothing in there at the moment. So let's go ahead and create that config file from this example. Just a quick note here, OliveTin needs the extension on the file to be .yaml, whereas Docker Compose uses .yml. Even though they're the same file format, OliveTin prefers YAML because that's kind of I think that's the better standard. So let's paste this in here. So it's an extremely simple config file with a single action, and we'll save this one. Okay, so we're now in that config directory. If we go back to the home directory, which is where my Docker Compose file is, that should be everything that we need to do. There's some instructions here on opening up the firewall. On this virtual machine I don't have a firewall running, but just check. There's, I think, UFW I think is the firewall command for Ubuntu. Firewall CMD is what Fedora uses, or you could use good old IP tables or whatever. Yeah, there's no firewall running on this example, so we can skip past that one. But if you get a connection refused in a minute when you try and get this running, then always good to check if your firewall is blocking port 1337. So let's get this up and running. So the first time you do this, you should download the container image, and it will take about a minute or so to download. But if everything is going well, then you'll have OliveTin initializing with the date of the version that you've got here. You can see that it's init complete, so it's up and running. So this is looking pretty good. If I just quit this and Control C, then that will stop the container. That's just how Docker Compose works. So really what you probably want to do is start it in the background with -D, and which means that starts in the background and I can then get back to my shell. So lastly, let's get the IP address of this server. So it's just a virtual machine here. So here's the IP, and we go pop that in the web browser. Then we should have OliveTin up and running. It's awesome. Now if we look at the logs for OliveTin, you can do docker logs -follow, and that way you can see what happens like when you're starting an action. You can see the logs here for the container. But there you go, that's just echoing hello world onto the command line. That's what my action is doing. And go ahead from here and you can see the logs of that are running. So that's all pretty cool. If I Control C out of the logs, I could just leave this running and then go ahead and add some more stuff to my Docker file. Sorry, to my OliveTin file. So let's say if I save the config file, then OliveTin should automatically pick up changes for most things in the config file. So now I have two buttons, so hello world and goodbye world. So very creative actions here, but it should be enough to get you started. So just quick recap, if you go to docs.olivetin.app, you should find these instructions that we followed through here, and that should be everything you need to get up and running. Thanks for listening to the video. I hope that was useful.